Hello, my YouTube family and friends. I pray that everyone is having a beautiful, blessed Thursday in the mighty name of Jesus. And if you have not said it already, let's say it together. Thank you, Jesus, for another day. It is indeed a blessing to be alive, y'all. So I wanted to hop on here. I'll try not to be on here too long. But I want to read Psalm 145, and it's verse 14 through 16, and it reads, "The Lord upholds all those who fall and lifts up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food at the proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing." And again, that was Psalm 145 verses 14 through 16. And so I want to hop on here, y'all. I love sharing. There was a time, I've shared this before, there was a time I was so ashamed to share a lot of stuff that I did in my past. But I'm going to say this again, I've said it before, but the only time you should ever look back is to see how far God has brought you. And I know God has brought me a mighty long way. My character, my, just the way I overall treat people, he's brought me so far, y'all. And he's still bringing me. And I know he's doing it for you too, but the main thing is that we recognize his goodness in our lives. We recognize his faithfulness in our lives. So many times I should have died. So many times I should have, could have possibly been left for dead. I did a lot of stuff, y'all, that was so reckless. I was living a foolish, just crazy life. That's what I was doing. And the main thing about it all, nobody around me even seemed like they didn't even care. Even my stepdad, biological dad wasn't even my family. I mean, it wasn't even in my life. And then my mom, it just seemed like the people, my siblings, it's like nobody even cared. I was just there to help them or do whatever they thought I should do for them. And that was it. That was pretty much it. But the beauty of it all, God never took his hand off of me. He keeps his hand on his children. He watches us. He knows our beginning, and he sure know our end. And I just thank him for that. I really do, because like I said, I can never forget what God did for me. I will never ever forget. I can't, because he's been better to me than I've been to myself. But I wanted to talk about, and this is really not even uncomfortable for me, because God has freed me from so much stuff, just nasty, dirty stuff I used to do, and sleeping around, fornicating, and just doing a lot of lying. He's freed me from those strongholds. So I don't mind sharing it with you all, because I'm free. I'm no longer bound by that. And there's that's what we got to come to the realization. It's a lot of stuff that you've done in your past, or you could be very well be doing right now. It ain't no time to be hiding it and throwing it under the rug. Be honest with yourself. God already knows what you did. He know what you're doing right now, what you're gonna do tonight or tomorrow, whenever you're planning on doing it, the sinning. But the whole matter of it all is that you be honest with yourself. You don't want to live in that bondage. And that's what the enemy, the devil, wants us to, you remember when you did that? You nasty. That's what he's telling me. You remember when you did that? And literally things are popping up in my head, y'all, or in my mind, that I did years ago, way before I even met my late husband. And I know it is just an attack of the enemy. It's a spiritual attack. But I say, devil, you a liar. That's in my past. Get under my feet. Get out of my face. Jesus already forgave me for that. And I've repented of those sins. But what he's doing, he think he's so slick and so sly when he bring it to my remembrance. And if I haven't shared it, I say, okay, I'm okay. Shouldn't have did that, because I'm gonna share it, because I want to help somebody. I want to help free somebody. Since I was free, Jesus freed me. I want to help free somebody else. But I want to talk about when I was I was dating. I don't want to necessarily say the minister of music, but at the time, I don't believe that was his title. But he was just a piano player, at the, because the church we were going to when I met him, it was like a small Baptist church. It was the church where my parents went. And so, you know, he was a big guy. And I'm trying to remember, at the time, y'all, I was super little. I was like, this ain't no attack on nobody's weight. I'm talking about myself. But I was real, you know, real skinny, real small framed. And, you know, I was getting teased about my weight. But what it was, I wasn't eating right. I was working all the time at that particular time. But me and him standing up against each other, you know, it just looked kind of whatever. But at that time, I was desperate. I just wanted a boyfriend, wanted somebody to pay me some attention. And he was like, he was a lot younger than me at the time, because I want to say, I think I was in my 30s then. And he could have been, I don't know, I know he was younger than me, I know that. So it was maybe like, I don't know, y'all, 8, 9, 10 year difference, something like that. I can't remember exactly. I really can't remember. But I just know that, and I could be wrong about the age difference, but it don't matter. I just know that he was younger than me. That's because, y'all, all this has happened. This was so many years ago. This was like, you know, way before I met my late husband. So anyway, he was, you know, I thought he was a nice looking guy. He was just a heavy, you know, he was a heavy guy. And so he was, you know, he was of course way taller than me. But he was the piano player at the church where my parents went. And he, you know, I can't remember well, I was going there, because this was before I would meet my late husband and start going to the church where his father preached, you know, pastored at. So I was going with my parents, but I didn't go, you know, I wasn't going to their church all the time. Like I would go, because I think sometimes I would have to work on the weekend, on Sunday or whatever. So I wasn't there every Sunday. But, you know, I can't remember how it all came about, but he sort of showed some interest in me. So that's all it took. You know, I wasn't even paying much attention to how old he was or whatever. I thought he was, you know, he wasn't like an eyesore or anything like that. But I was like, yeah, you know, he's younger than me. But, you know, he was average. He looked all right, I guess. And so at this particular time, y'all, my self-esteem was super low. So I was just looking for somebody to pay me some attention. You know, I didn't even know how you know, beautiful I was. Not about on the outside, but just on the inside. But I needed, you know, I was looking for that, somebody to confirm that to me. In which he never said it. But he treated me okay, I guess, pretty nice or whatever. So he paid me some attention. So that's all I was looking for. You know, again, no dad in my life, no father figure. You know, stepdaddy, he didn't look at me like that. He didn't pay attention to me as far as raising me and rearing me right. Mama, she didn't. So I'm just looking for somebody to pay me some attention. So like I said, I don't remember how it all came about. I just know that we ended up exchanging numbers and thinking the church or whatever. And, you know, it went on from there. And he lived with his mom and his grandmother. And so they had a pretty nice house or whatever, pretty nice neighborhood. And so, you know, and I'm finna get, y'all stay with me because I'm going somewhere with this. But again, just keep in mind, he was younger than me. And of course I was older. I was low self-esteem and, you know, looking for love and all that, but still I was mature. You know, I knew a lot of stuff that he didn't know. And I felt like at a lot of times he was acting childish. So, you know, I wouldn't even have called it a relationship. We're fornicating. And, you know, I go over to his, like I said, he lived with his mom and grandmother. So I go over there, we have sex or whatever. I don't believe he ever came, because at that particular time, I had my own place. So I don't believe he ever came over to my apartment. I think I always went over to his. He didn't have an apartment. I always went over to where he lived with his grandmother and his mom. And so anyway, I go over there through the week or whatever. We have sex in his room on a little twin bed or whatever. and you know, that was pretty much it. And so we didn't really go, we didn't go out. We didn't go anywhere or whatever. And it was almost like it was kept undercover. You know, we see each other at church or whatever, and I'd be trying to stand by him, you know, because he was very, sort of no, I guess I'll say popular. He was sort of popular at that church. The church that we were at was sort of an older type church. Wasn't a lot of kids there. Wasn't a lot of youth there. It was mostly older people. And so by him living with the mom and the grandmama, he's real close to his grandmama. I figured that out. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get to the grandmama, get in good with her. Well, both of them, the mama and the grandmama, so I can, stay good with him, That's how I was thinking. And so they liked me right away. Of course, they liked my parents. They knew my parents real well. And so all of us knew each other, whatever. So anyway, the grandmother, she could cook really well. Of course, now she's since passed away. But she could cook real well. She always baking cakes and stuff. So whenever I would go over there, at that time, I didn't really know how to cook. But I just sit in there in the kitchen and watch her, just trying to, I don't even know where I thought that was going. I don't even think I wanted to marry him. But I was just biding my time. I'm having sex with him every now and then. We're not really going anywhere. We're not really spending any time together. But, okay, I guess. I don't even know what we were doing, to be honest. But it was just something just to pass the time away, I guess, for both of us, I believe. But anyway, because it was never no love shown towards each other. And so, like I said, I was trying to get in good with her. And it worked for a while. And me and her be talking or whatever. And then she would tell me, yeah, he really he like you. He just got to have a hard time showing his feelings sometimes. I'm trying to get feedback. Instead of talking to him, I'm trying to get feedback from the grandmama, which she didn't even know a whole lot about him. Just, her view she was giving was from, him just living with her. But she didn't know, I think I had to learn a lot of stuff on my own. But again, it's hard to learn things from people and you just laying in the bed having sex with them. You're not talking, you're not going nowhere, you're not spending time together, you're not effectively communicating. So what you gonna learn from them? We just have sex. That's the only thing we really had we really like doing together. And we didn't do that just a few times. But anyway, and it was just something to do. And so like I said, his mom, she she liked me, I think, but it was more so I had more interaction with the grandma. And so then when it come time to go back to church, we were at church. Like I said, it was like I was younger than him and he's older than me. I'm like a little sweat box, they call it. I don't know if y'all ever heard that term, but me and my late husband used to talk about that all the time. He said, yeah, you was sweatboxing him, which means, you up under somebody and won't give them room to breathe, And so, which I wasn't like that, but to an extent I was, I was just, up under him and whatever, and just trying to be around him so I could deem myself, me and him are together, not boyfriend, girlfriend, but we doing something here, respect this, that's why I was trying to get the point across, which nobody cared. They didn't care. But he was more so of a, if you will, like I guess what you would call a class clown. And I don't mean in a bad way, but he had people at the church that was older than him, and they just thought he was so funny because, he always was joking and saying little stuff about different people in the church. And so it was like, they liked his humor and they liked hanging around him, and they laugh and talk about people and stuff like that. So I was trying to fit in, which there again, God said, I've set you apart. He was setting me apart then, but I was always trying to fit myself in somebody's circle that that I didn't need to be trying to fit in. But I remember this one time, I think when we were supposed to have been together, they did a lot of bus trips. They do a lot of bus trips in the South, church trips. And so, everybody got chicken, they got rolls, they got biscuits and all that. And it's just a long trip to a church and from. And so, anyway, I don't know if we sat together or not on that bus, but I can't remember, y'all. Like I said, it's been so long ago. But my whole point in sharing this is that I have always tried to be loved, to be liked, to be, accepted. And Jesus said, here I am. And so I have belittled myself. I have sunk down to the lowest of lows, and not saying that that's who he was, but I'm saying been around people and showing affection to people that didn't have no affection towards me. They didn't have no regard for me for other than what I could provide, for them or give to them, using me. And, in that case, we were sort of using each other, but at the same time, it still wasn't right. We were fornicating, we were sleeping together. And so, like I said, I was always trying to insert myself somewhere where God was like, you don't even fit in here. What are you doing? And this ain't who I created for you. Why are you laying up with him? Why are you having sex with this younger man? But I had really, in that time in my life, y'all, I had really become desperate. I was, like I said, found myself going over, I would go over his house, when he wasn't there. Like, he'll be at work or something, and I go over there, trying to, be chummy with the grandma. And she could care less. She was an older lady, real older lady. She could care less. And his mom, she worked third shift, so usually when I went over there, she was asleep. And so, because I always went over like 1, 2 o'clock or whatever, because she worked, I think, 11 o'clock at night or something like that, 11 to 7 or whatever. But I just know, I remember she worked at night. So she was always asleep during the day when I would be over there. Every now and then, she would be up or walking around the house or something. But, and I thought I was in, okay, I know the temperature of this house. I know what, I'm in with the grandmama, the mama, okay. I ain't really got her in all the way. I ain't chummed up to her real good, but grandmama, I had, she seemed like she really liked me. And so we had a lot of, good talks and stuff, me and the grandmama, and I don't know, I just felt like, but I knew deep down inside that it was a waste of time. I knew it was, but yet I continued to do it. And we only were doing whatever we were doing, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what you call it, because we were not dating. Like I said, we did not go anywhere together. It was always, I would come over there to the house to see him, over his mom and grandmama house to see him. My car be parked out there in front of the yard. And it was like then it got where, I was becoming a bother. Because see, I think he may have, liked the sex part. I didn't really care for that, because I felt like we were just doing something just to do it. I think we liked each other, because, I was nice, he was nice, and, I guess nice looking. But I think it was more so of, this is just, it's okay. It's okay, I guess. But like I said, we were not dating. We didn't go anywhere together. And that should have been a red flag for me right there. But like I said, I was just desperate, y'all. I can't even I don't know no other words to say. I was just super desperate. And I was just going around just trying to, just making bad decision after bad decision, one after the other. And my parents, I remember at that time, they knew what was going on, but they never really said anything to me about it and tried to sit me down. My stepfather, he was very active in that church. Very active. And I remember the young man telling me, who played the piano, who I was having sex with, he had told me, he said, they really, because during this time, we had just recently joined that church. So, and I think that was the other thing. I was trying to insert my way, okay, I ain't in the world no more. So if I, maybe that something can develop from this. I think that's what I thought too initially. But you can't make nothing happen with somebody who ain't even created for you. You can try all day, but it ain't gonna work. But I think that's where I was going with that. I was trying to come out of, the fornicator, even though I still was, but I was trying to come out of the worldly stuff. Okay, I'm in church. This guy go to church. He in church. His grandmama in church. His mama in church. I can't remember about his father, but I don't believe his father was in his life. But it was just, what that I remember. But it was just like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Okay, even though I'm sinning, I'm fornicating, but I'm doing the right thing. I'm trying. I'm attempting to do the right thing. And so from that relationship, but see, y'all, thank you, Jesus. I didn't even think about this. God was preparing me. Not through sinning, not through having sex outside of marriage, but what I'm saying, what was getting ready to happen for me. But we'll get to that. But anyway, this was just it was a test run, and it's not. But basically, it was a what do you call it? What's the word I'm trying to say? It was a it was not. He was not the one. He was not the one. But it's a word though. He was a it's not phony. He was a I guess if you want to say imposter, but there's y'all, I can't remember the word. It's another word. He wasn't the one. He wasn't the one. And the enemy camouflaged him like, okay, I know that's what she wants. She want a family. She want to be married. But like I said, you can't make something be something if it's not. He wasn't even for me. He wasn't even created for me. So it was it never work. It was never gonna work. But I was trying to make it work. So anyway, like I said, my parents, they knew. Oh, I want to go back to that. So he had told me. It was one day I had went over there to where he lived, their house, and he said, yeah. Like I said, keep in mind, we had just recently joined that church. Me and my family, mom and stepdad, and my siblings. And so, like I said, I didn't come every single Sunday because a lot of times I just didn't come. I just didn't go. And then sometimes I think I may have had to work or something, but mostly I think I just didn't go. And so he said, yeah, everybody at the church, they really like your dad. He talked about my stepdad. So, like I said, at the time, we were all new to that church. We had been going to a church that was across town, but it was like my dad then wanted to get a brand new start, so they said. So they wanted to go over, to this church. And so they had told me about it, and that's how they introduced me. And so I just started going because they were going, which I ended up joining and stuff and going to Bible study and this, that, getting involved. So he was, when he told me that, he was talking about they were thinking about voting my stepfather in as a deacon. He said they really like him, and they, everybody like him. He, just trying to just soup me up real good to make me think. And so that was really pumping me up because I'm like, okay, I got this scenario. Okay, they like my daddy, and he seemed like he liked me or whatever. Talking about the guy that I was sleeping with, and so piano player. And so, okay, so this gonna work out. It may take a little while, but it may work out, okay? And so, no, it didn't. And, but like I said, as time went on, it felt more so. I noticed he had a thing where, I told you he was young, and he didn't really have a dad he didn't have his daddy one in his life either. But he was very sharp-tongued. He would say stuff and think it was so funny. And I think a lot of times he would say something about my weight. But at that particular time, I wasn't, like I said, I was just all over the place, y'all. Like I said, I was little. I was very small frame. And, I felt some way about that because like I said, he was a big guy. He was a big guy. And so, and he loved, he enjoyed eating. And I did too, but at that time, I just couldn't keep weight on me for whatever reason. And so, of course, years went on, I was able to gain weight, but I just didn't eat a lot then. But he would just make little snide remarks about that. And then when we were at church together, he would sort of, isolate himself from me, even though he was having sex with me at his house. But it was like, I don't know who that is, And then I was thinking, how am I even accepting this type of treatment, this type of rejection from somebody who's younger than me, which that don't even matter, but it's just like, I don't even have to subject myself to this type of treatment. But he had started, he had a thing about, he's very, he could be rude a lot of times and just nasty with his words. And he would think it was funny, which I started finding, I was like, this is really, really unattractive because, by you not only being saying, you in the church and you're supposed to be representing Christ, and sort of, I was wanting to do the right thing, but I'm like, you don't just talk to people in a kind of way. So he started, like I said, just saying little things. He'd be talking about people at church to me, and they and just making really ugly remarks about people and stuff, gossiping, but then just being rude too. And so I'm just like, and so like I said, over time, time went on, and next thing I know, we were not we were not doing anything anymore and talking or having sex or anything. And so, and that was just, like I said, and then I think back on that, there was no love there. It was just convenience. It was, we go to the same church, I don't even know if he even liked me. I don't know if I even liked him. It was just something to do. I'm just gonna be honest. It was just something to do. And like I said, it was almost like when we were at church, he would act as though, he didn't have, like, who is that, but then it would be totally different, of course, when, we were at his home. So I was like, okay, I think I see what's going on here. Because, he didn't want to, I think what it was too, and I'm not making an excuse, but I believe this is true. I was looking for a relationship. I wanted to be an item. I wanted us to be an item, but he didn't want that, because he was younger than me. So, he wanted to be free. He wanted to go hang out with them women, the older women. And I don't think it was nothing there, but he just liked cutting up with them. He liked having fun and talking about people. And see, I didn't do any of that. I'm trying to get to know Jesus. That's what I'm trying to get to know, even though I was having sex, but fornicating, but I was still interested in the Lord, and I'm just like, and like I said, I started joining different, ministries in the church and being a part of I enjoyed that, being a part of a lot of different ministries and, heading up, being over different days that they would have and stuff. So that was, so even though what the enemy meant for evil, God made it for good, because that was preparation for me. I feel like, because I was not too long after that, I was going to be meeting my late husband, which he was already in church. He's a pastor's son, oldest son, and I was going to be heavily involved in church then. But see, I feel like that was preparation. That was the beginning of what I was going to have to go through and deal with. I never thought about that until now, y'all. For 21 years, me and him was married. Then he passed away, but that was preparation. A lot of times we have to go through stuff, even with our bad choices, even with our sinning. But God used everything. He used everything for our good. And I never thought about that until now that I'm talking to y'all. That was preparation. Yes, it was not the Christian thing to do. No, it was not the right choice I made. But it was preparing me for what I had been wanting, what I had been praying for. Because what I was wanting at that particular time, which I was not going to get from him, that guy, but I was desiring marriage. I was desiring children. I was desiring, to be close to the Lord, to be involved in church. I wanted all of that then. And then, but see, I was going about it the wrong way. But like I said, I want to share this, my late husband, so after we met, and a little bit, because we actually got married in that church, y'all. I'm telling y'all, I did some wild stuff. And then I think back on that, it was like, okay, I did it now, and I was making people like what I did, even though it was some of that stuff was like making people uncomfortable. But I'm like, well, it is what it is. But I was like, well, I don't have nothing to hide, because everybody know, me and him used to sleep. We slept together, talking about the guy who played the piano. So I'm like, well, but that was a pretty bold move what I did, because after we got married in that church. We got married in that church, and which was my parents' church where they were attending. And we could have gotten married at his dad, the church his dad was ministering at, but for some reason I just wanted to be married there. And so, but I remember the first time when my late husband, we went over to, he came to my parents' church with me, because I wanted him to come there, because that's where we're going to be married and everything. And he told me, y'all, in the car, of course, we were having sex before we got married, which I've already shared that before, but he had told me when we went back to the apartment, he said, "There's something going on with you." This before I even said anything to him. He said, "Something going on with you, you and the piano player. Hey, what's going on with him?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" I was just trying to whatever. and I was trying to hide it. And so he said, yeah, something, y'all used to date or something? He knew God, God gave him a discerning spirit. He knew right away. I did not have to tell him anything. He could tell. How, because he said, it was a little awkward. Well, because one, his mom, the guy's mom would sit. She sat, She sat pretty close to where we were sitting at that Sunday, which that's what she always said. But it was just a over the top, hey, how you doing? And he picked up on that. He did nothing get by him. Did nothing. And that's how he started, was how he went through that whole marriage. He paid attention to everything. You couldn't, snow him over. He would pay attention to everything. And so I said, what do you mean? And he said, yeah. Did y'all had something going on? I said, yeah. I told him everything. He said, I knew it. He said, I knew it. And so then later on, a few of the people at the church, they would make little comments, say, this the one right here. They were talking about my late husband, said, this the one you supposed to be with. And because a lot of them, they didn't like the young guy. They didn't like him because, like I said, he just had a lot of growing up to do. Like I said, he wasn't a bad looking guy or nothing like that, but he was just, he was childish. He was very childish. That's what it was too. So anyway, but yeah, he picked up on that so fast. But we had the wedding there, and then a lot of them from that church came. I mean, I just put it all out there. It was like, well, y'all know I dated him, but and then for a while, I think when we would come, of course, when I started having babies, and so I go over there because I was like, everybody know, that time it went on. We had been married 7-8 years, and my late husband, he'll come. We all take pictures at my parents' church or whatever, on special days, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever. And so I go up to him and shake his hand or hug him, the piano player. So it became, and the grandmama, I ran to her, hey, because I used to sit at her table. I used to watch her bake cakes in the kitchen, and his mama too. I was just like, ain't nothing changed, ain't nothing changed but my last name, ain't nothing changed. I got babies now, I'm married now, I'm still the same person, and I never, was trying to, hide from that or anything, because everybody knew. And that's why I know the Lord is calling me, and he's calling you all too, to be honest. Be honest about what you used to do. Be honest about what you're doing now. God know everything. There's nothing hidden from him. And, so people can't throw it back in your face. Say, yeah, I did that. And God forgave. I asked God to forgive me. I repented of those sins. I'm moving forward. But when you slipping and sliding and hiding and, I don't want to talk about that. That makes you bitter inside. That makes you, because if you're hiding that, what else is you hiding? And that could be small, it could be big or whatever, but it's like, why are you even hiding it? That's been years ago. But it's a lot of people, they don't want you to bring up their past. But me, I'm like, yeah, I did that. Because it's a lesson in that. It's a lesson in what I did. I don't want to ever do it again. That's my past. But yeah, that was so funny to me. I said, how did you know that? I was asking my late husband. He said, I just know. He said, I could tell. He said, the mama was over the top when she was talking to me. And he said, the grandmama, he couldn't pick up nothing off of her. But he said the mama was over the top. And then he said, I could tell with the guy, the piano player, he said, I could tell with him, it was something off there. He said, I couldn't really pinpoint it, but he said, it was something. He said, I didn't know if y'all had sex, but he said, I knew something was before me. He said, I could just tell. And I was like, wow, and he said, I just picked up on it. And I said, well, you was right. You were correct in that. So we laughed about that, and he, like I said, he went over there some more times, and like I said, as I started having babies and children, and then the next thing I know, nobody was uncomfortable. I would say hey to the guy, hey, how you doing? He said, I'm doing good. And we'll hug or whatever. It was nothing like God made everything peaceful. And I don't, and like I said, I believe if nothing else, that came from a place where, you know, we weren't deeply in love or madly in love or anything like that, me and that guy. So I think that's what it was. It was almost more like we were just friends, I guess. I don't know. But we were not in a relationship. We were not that. But it was not awkward for me at all, and it was not awkward for him or his mama or his grandmother. I still treated them the same. When I would go over there and visit the church, because I didn't get to go. Only time I would, after I got married to my late husband, only time I could go over there was when the special, like Mother's Day, Father's Day, when they have a program or something like that. Because I was at member at we went to his father's church that he ministered at, preached at. So I mean, he was a pastor at. So it was the only time in special days. That's the only time we would go over there. And then when we go over there, everybody would just kind of swarm around us because they hadn't seen me in a while or hadn't. Because even my children to this day, they say, "Mama, we would go over there. They treated us like we lived in another state or something. Like we were famous or something." And I said, "Yeah." I said they did that. I don't know why they did that, but they were just so. I mean, they were just so be hugging us, and sometimes we had been over there pretty recent, but that's what they did. Even the pastor at that time who married me and my late husband, of course he's since passed away now, but he did the same thing. And because like I said, sometimes you just never know how you thinking, you did everything wrong or you did so much wrong, but people remember how you were. They remember how you never changed. They remember how I was still the same woman, even though I made some bad decisions, sleeping with that guy, trying to get married or whatever you want to call it, I don't know why I did that, but just made a bad decision. But God, like I said, what the enemy meant for evil, God made it for my good. And that was just preparation. It was getting me ready to meet my late husband and to prepare me for marriage, for what I really wanted, But God said, this ain't what you want here, But then, like I said, as time went on, the guy, the piano player, he ended up meeting somebody. They got married, and I was able to, I wasn't at the wedding, but I was able to, the times we were going over there, or I heard, I don't know if was I actually at the church. I don't know, y'all. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if I actually was at the church after he had got married. I think I had been over there since he had been married, but visiting or whatever. But yeah. He ended up getting married, and they both were in the education field. And so yeah, I don't know if they have children or anything. I think she already had a child, but I don't know if they're having children together or anything. But yeah, they got him a nice house, and so I was like, okay, all's well ends well. So but my whole point of sharing this video again is that, again, thank God for how far he's brought you. Thank God for the blessings that he's, just showered upon you, during in and throughout your life. Because I just think back on that, that could have never worked, because that was not who God had for me. And it just seemed like I just always made bad decisions with choosing men. And that was the whole point. I was not supposed to be choosing them. I was supposed to allow God to show me. And then he was going to do the rest. He that finds a wife finds a good thing. I was out there looking myself. And that's why I kept going through bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. Because I was looking for love in all the wrong places, when all I had to do, y'all, was open my Bible up. That's all I had to do. And the Lord said, if you would allow me to speak to you. But of course, then I didn't have a relationship with him. So I was just out searching for love. And what I was searching for, I did not receive what I was searching for. But I was getting other stuff that I should not have been, doing other stuff I should not have been doing. But I just wanted to hop on here and share that. I pray that this video blesses somebody, because like I said, when the enemy try to bring stuff up from my past, I said, okay, I'm going to share that. I'm going to share it. Because I'm not ashamed. I'm not. God has been so good to me. And like I said, when I just think back over my life, and I don't have to think long. I don't have to think long. I could just think back to this morning, just an hour ago. He's kept us when we couldn't even keep ourselves. And I thank him for my journey. I thank him for it all, because he's made it all for my good. But as always, I pray you always hear Jesus speaking through me and never me. I pray you've had a beautiful, blessed Thursday in the mighty name of Jesus. I love you, but remember, Jesus loves you so much more. The best is still yet to come for you and for me. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. I pray that you were able to be a blessing to, pray you were a blessing to someone today. You were already blessed when Jesus woke you up this morning. Have a beautiful, blessed night, and enjoy all of the many blessings that God has given to you and your family. And it is indeed a blessing to be alive. Thank you all for listening, for subscribing to this channel. I love you, but remember, Jesus loves you so much more. Bye-bye.